Hi, John Cipher here. My friend Jon Matzner and I recorded 3 videos that correspond to 3 parts of my book, Output Thinking. The first part is what is output thinking and how should you use it? The second part shows that the outputs are best produced by systems and that's how your company scales. And the third part is a holistic look at all the systems in your company and how they interact, and shows how you can organize things to get what you want from your company. There's a fourth part which we didn't cover, 20 exercises to do in your CEO time, and they're scattered throughout the book. I want to thank Jon for recording these with me and recommend that you follow him on Twitter and subscribe to his great newsletter on Beehive called Lazy Leverage to learn even more ways to improve your work as a business owner. With that, let's get to the video.
All right. So John and I are back for part 3, which is how do you in my mind, I think about it as zooming out. I mean, how do you?
That's a good way to do it. So it's almost a replacement for the org chart. So if you think of the org chart as a chart of all the people in your company, this is a way to look at all the outputs of all the systems in your company. And it turns out at the highest level, there are 7 what I call buckets that these outputs fall into.
I'm right in within 30 seconds. I'm going to disagree with you because my favorite bucket of all is the 8th.
Right. That's the phantom bucket.
And I think that's what we should start with, because I think we should start there because that reverse engineers your way into the other 7, which is, so I'd like you to speak to the 8th,
Okay.
we talked about the 7, but then I read your book and I'm like, he's been holding out on me. There's an 8th.
The 8th bucket is actually where I start with clients. And the 8th bucket is,
there you go. I called it.
It's what do you want from your company? So many processes of planning and say, what's your vision for your company? Where's it going to be 10 years from now, et cetera? And I say, why are you in this company anyway, at this time in your life? If it were a genie, what would you ask it?
Black box. If it was a black box, what would magically spout out the end? Don't worry about all this crap.
And there's 3, now sometimes 4 that are very common. People want more money. People want time off, actually. Not time in the company, but time off. They want work that they enjoy. And with the internet, what it is now, and the easier to be remote, people can live wherever they want. So where do you want to live?
I want to pause because I think that it's what we were talking about offline, which was, I think your experience lets you explain concepts simpler, easier, punchier, more clearly than I can. And that definition of, I've worked with freaking 5,000 business owners. And at the end of the day, it's 4 freaking things. It's 4 things: geographic flexibility, doing more of what I like and less of what I don't like, more money, more time. It's like that's such a good distillation of these $1 million to $30 million. It's not fancy, but it's true. Like, I think it's such a good distilled nugget of wisdom, which is, and I want to get less freaking emails, which is really a form of do less work of what I don't.
Do more of what I don't want to.
I don't want to be chained to my freaking inbox all day.
Do more of the kind of work I love and less the kind of work I don't love. And
I just love that point so much.
Sometimes that means I don't want to work in this company very much. When I moved, and I want to do something else. When I moved, so I want to build a hold company, for example, or I want to, get into something else. When I moved 1,500 miles away from my video thing, I got it down to where it was maybe 20, 25 hours a month. And somebody said, you ought to look into this thing called coaching. You'd be great. And I said, what's that? It hadn't become a buzzword. And so I got into coaching and started with the people that started the International Coach Federation and a bunch of other stuff. But so it's, what do you want to do with that time? There's a bunch of other things that I have found that aren't universal. Some people want to be famous. Some people want to use their business to launch into politics or philanthropy or some of it
for edge cases. I feel like, though, right? I mean,
well, they're not. Everybody's got some edge to them. They're not. There's not one that's universal. And
one could be there could absolutely be like, I want to solve the water crisis.
I want to give back. Or a mission. So a mission is certainly one of them. When I say, look, if you take 2 people, one of whom loves to travel and one of whom doesn't, they're going to build different kinds of companies, even if they're in the same industry. Because if you're a plumber, you want to travel, you're going to go to, conferences, you might get into plumbing supply, and you can go all over the place. If you hate doing that, you're going to stay home and just build it locally. So those things drive a person subconsciously in making business decisions. My point is, let's get them up on the table.
It's such a good point though, John. And I stole this from you because, it's like, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right? Little George Harrison. And so I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and as usual with me, I'm like a rabid chihuahua, just sprinting out the door on global talent and AI and whatever. And then we talked for 45 minutes and I went, so I didn't do what you do, which is the first question should have been, what's your goal? And he's like, oh, I want to make like, $15,000 a month. And I'm like, get 3 clients to pay you $5,000 each. Ignore everything I've said for the last 45 minutes. You can get there in 2 days. And I was like, shit. And like, so I think this 8th bucket, as we tee it up into the other 7, like I'm like, well, you could put it in Notion and AI and on. And the guy's like, I actually kind of like doing the work myself. I just hate the back office.
I had a client
I'm just an idiot. I'm an idiot. I'm a golden retriever idiot.
This goes into something that's not in the book, but 3 different stage of companies. And stage 1 company, the owner is doing customer facing work. They're making the stuff the customers buy, they're selling. I had a client, she does sales training, and she had a handful of contractors that she used. And we got to where she was depending on them as contractors and not as her business partners, which was her mistake at the beginning. And when I explained that, she said, I don't want to be a stage 2 or a stage 3 company. I like working with clients. So it's great. The solution to that, if that's what you want, be really good at what you do and charge high prices, and you can work for the people who want to pay them high prices and get really good work. And you're done. You're having a good life.
And for me and you, that is the complete wrong answer. And for her, that is a perfect stinking answer.
Yeah. And so then once you know that, then you can build the company to get you what you want.
Yeah.
And that's
you do a worksheet in your coaching, right? Which I really like, because I think this tees up well into the 7 buckets, which is like an onboarding form. So
yeah,
like you kind of like pull this
20
out.
questions. So it's, I've got probably 24 now of things that people have told me they want from their company. It's actually scary to some people to actually say, okay, I've got a blank slate. What do I want? Oh my God, I don't know. I'm so used to reacting. And
Interesting.
One of the things you see with kids coming out of school, there is such an easy way. It's not easy, but there's a simple way to pass in class. There's a rubric. You know what the answers. You may not know the answer.
It's a bounded game.
There you go. It's a bounded game. And so what I tell my kids, look, there's so many ways to be successful as an adult, and there's so few ways to be successful in school. Suck it up. Do what you can in school, because it'll give you more options as an adult. But don't limit your thinking. But once you have, okay, this is what I want from my company. Now, how do I create a company that's worth that? And the things that you want from it, they don't have to be logical. You say, I want my company, I want a $10 million company when I sell. It's not worth it much now. It doesn't have to be worth it now for you to want it. And 10 million is a very common number, by the way.
But the guy who wrote "I Will Teach You to Be Rich," he writes articulately on some stuff. And one of the exercises he does, which I love, is a lot of times people aren't good at spending money or even dreaming. They won't, like, what would it look, John, you love airplanes. What would it look like if you spent 10 times as much money on airplanes? You would have an airplane coach. You'd have an office where you got, and like, he has to like
pull that out.
Well, he has to like he has to like therapeutically pull it out of them. Like, no, I have to be on job site. No. I'm not talking about what you have to do today. Like, what do you want? And it's like pulling teeth, right?
This is where, coaching goes into therapy, and you have to, as a coach, you have to stop and draw the line and say, okay, this is now go talk to somebody else. But, it is very emotional to run a company and to want to run a company and to deal with what we started out with, the frustration of employees not doing what you want because you didn't define the outputs properly, that can be very triggering. And one of the key skills of running a company is to be able to separate your emotions from your judgments
and
from
separate your
actions.
identity from your business.
Oh,
I think
very
is
different.
also another,
Yeah.
it's a kind of a corollary to that point, right?
Yeah.
Just my business is something that exists without me. I am one of the members on this stage in this band, but it's plays music without me if it's doing well, if you want it to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or not. Maybe you want to play in the band forever. That's okay too, right?
Yeah.
So transitioning that, John. So I had to start with the 8 because again, I just 30
Yeah.
seconds and I was like, I want the 8th bucket because
Okay,
everything,
there you go.
everything kind
So
of.
you read the end of the book first. So what can I tell you?
I know I gave the punchline up. But it's a really powerful point because I just love, just not to beat a dead horse, but at any point, if the business is giving you what you want, stop. If
Yeah.
you just stop, you don't have to. Nobody says Harvard would be great if it was bigger. They're
Yeah.
perfectly happy with 10,000 students a year. They're never like, if I only had 100,000. If you're making enough money, you travel, you work with people you like, stop. So as we move into the other 7 buckets, I think it's a good way to look at some of the first principles of fulfilling your 8th bucket, which is what the heck you want out of your business. So do you think it's best to talk through each of these buckets one by one? Like how do you kind of intro the concept of buckets?
So I usually deal with somebody who's frustrated.
Mhm.
Um,
They call you, right? You're the
yeah. And now
frustrated guy.
that's been what I've been doing for 20 years. Recently, I've been working with searchers who have bought a company and they're not necessarily frustrated. They're just like, hey, I know this has to get better. And where do we go from there? And that side of the equation is, okay, what's the purpose of your company, which is to create a customer? It's a Peter Drucker quote. Who is a customer? Customer is somebody that pays you. What do they pay you for? They pay you for something they value. So the first bucket is serving that customer, making a product or service that they want to buy. And there's a whole lot of systems that go into that production side of things, making the product, making it the right quality for your level of customer. If you look at, in a sense, discount retailers, dollar store is one, Walmart is one, Costco is known for being a discount. Very different quality levels, very different pricing levels, very different things you're going to find there, but it's tailored to their customers, giving the value that they want.
So you would call product service fulfillment kind of bucket.
Yes, I call it the offering because a
what the
retailer,
hell they're paying you for? It's like what the hell
what they're paying you for. Yeah, and a retailer, it's the value that they provide. A retailer doesn't actually provide a service. It doesn't provide a product. They provide curation of the right stuff that's on the shelf, and they provide location.
Yeah.
So that you can go to one
Convenience.
place. You don't have to go to the butcher and the baker and the this and the that, all that stuff. So some value they're paying you for. And that production piece is, in many businesses, that's where most employees are. And they're producing different outputs and there's different systems. That varies the most by industry, what that is. There's a 4 or 5 different pieces to that don't all apply, but one of them is the design of what you provide. There's the procurement of inventory and raw materials and all that. There's the assembly of putting it all together, delivery, and customer service. Now, again, those don't all apply to every kind of business, but whatever it is. So that's that bucket. And it's measured by cost of goods and profit margin and things like that. Then you have to find those customers and sell to them. So that's the selling bucket, and that's the marketing and sales and those pieces. And that's much more similar across industries. Different for direct to consumer, different for B2B, but in general, you're generating leads. That's one of the subsystems. And then you're closing the deals. That's the other subsystem. And sometimes there's more complexity in there, but you're ultimately producing customers who are paying you for something. So those are the two main buckets that a company has to do. Then there's 4 what I call sustaining buckets, whose job it is to keep the production and the sales going. So that's people, hiring, managing, motivating, training, all the stuff that goes around people. Then there's a bucket of money, which is your accounts payable, accounts receivable, and what's often missing in smaller companies, the financial analysis, the CFO work, and paying taxes. The output of taxes, by the way, is the lowest taxes you can pay with the least drama and no surprises.
Right.
And I look at taxes as it's the rent that you pay for being in whatever country you're in.
Good way to say it.
You want to go somewhere where there's no
Right.
taxes, they
Yeah.
don't have roads, and you may have to hand deliver your invoices because they don't have the internet
Yep.
and all that good stuff. So that's the money piece. And then there's information, which is a subset of how is the information flow in your company? And is there a back channel, meaning the people who deal with customers and vendors at the front lines, they learn a lot of stuff. Is there a way for that information to get back to the people who set strategy and who the higher ups and that kind of thing?
In military world, you'd call that an OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. It's
Yeah.
a decision loop, and that bucket is about that loop being.
Yeah. And you want that wisdom that we were talking about before, not to live in people's heads, but to be dispersed through recipes and dances and all that stuff that you document. Can people access it? And there's a communication piece, which I was just thinking about this today. That should fit in that information, which is, if you think about any employee right now, there's probably 6 ways you could reach him. You could text him, you could phone him, you could email, you could, Slack or whatever other things.
Microsoft Teams, yeah.
Yeah. So stop that. You have, as a manager, you have to design the right protocols for the right.
You want to know
communication.
one of my freaking bugaboos? It drives me nuts. Somebody texts me about work on my personal phone number, then they email me, then they email my personal email, then they send me a link to Dropbox, and I'm like, I'm gonna lose it. Like, pick one. I don't care what.
No. You do. Wait. Stop right there. You do care as the manager. Now, you can't control the customers. I get that. But
Yes,
internally.
Yes, you can. You don't give them your cell phone number. You don't give them, you say.
You can't control them to the same degree. Let me put it that way.
Okay, fine.
So, but internally, you absolutely have to control them.
And it's usually business partners. It's usually partners who F it up because they've got my cell phone number from back when we were friends before we bought the company. Yeah. That's usually where staff or my team, they know.
And the thing that you use to design it, this is what you have described as division of labor in manufacturing.
Yeah, specialization.
You need to do the same thing with knowledge workers. And what you want to do is say, look, how quickly is a response needed?
Yep.
If it's immediate, then it's what I call blood or fire.
Yeah.
That's probably
loss of limb. Yeah.
You probably want to do that on the phone.
Yeah.
But other than that, my phone should not ring. If you're calling me, I'm expecting it to be blood or fire.
Yeah.
If you need a 2-hour turnaround, maybe you text me. And I learned this lesson from a sales guy who was on the road, and his office needed to talk to him sometimes within a couple hours. And he said, okay, every time I'm done with my meeting, I'll check my texts and I'll get back to you right away. But if you don't need it till the next day, email me and I'll check my email at the end of the day. If it's something that needs to be persistent, then it needs to go into Slack or it needs to go into a repository somewhere, and I'll check that weekly or whenever I need to. So that's how you define that. And then you have to keep those, you have to enforce that as the manager. But that's your job as a manager, to make people more productive.
Peter Lohman is around if we want him to join, who actually has a great, he was which is having a discrete communication policy in your company.
Yeah.
Here are the things you get to text me about. Here are the things you email me about. I swear to God, if you call me for an update on that maintenance order, I'm going to fire. Like, don't.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to hang up.
And meetings fall into that.
Mm.
There are certain meetings that have a certain cadence.
This should go to your one-on-one. This should go to your one-on-one. We meet on Thursdays.
If it can wait till the meeting, it needs to wait.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So that's the information bucket. And then there's a bucket that I just call CAFE, which stands for compliance, administrative support.
I don't know. Shit, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. Compliance, administrative support, facilities, and et cetera, which is insurance, legal. There's a bunch of things that they're not really systems with outputs. They're things that if you don't check them once in a while, you're going to get your ass kicked.
You get dinged.
So you probably should review them at least once a year and do that. So those are the sustaining buckets. The whole purpose of those buckets is to keep the marketing and sales and the production operating at full speed. And then when all that happens, the next bucket is scale. The company can scale. Without scaling, a company can survive, but it needs to, if it wants to grow, then it needs scaling. And the outputs that go into the scaling bucket are strategy. You should have a written strategy of where you're going.
Like
planning.
a vivid vision.
Not that.
Peter just joined and he loves vivid vision. So
okay.
Say hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, there you go.
He was just finishing up his I think it's your last bucket, right?
Yeah. And so the last one is scale, which is having a strategy, which a guy named Roger Martin has a great video of what strategy is. It's what field we're playing on and how we're going to win. And then plans, goals, KPIs, that all goes into the scaling bucket.
So Peter, have you finished your output thinking? I finished it this morning. John and I are just doing our third 30-minute session. So we did 30 minutes on outputs, 30 minutes on systems, and then 30 minutes on the seven or eight buckets. Have you flipped through? You're unfortunately, you're referenced more than I am, because I think you got a task map call out.
Yeah, the task map and the dance thing.
And a dance thing.
Yeah. You guys had the misfortune of being quoted in my book, so I appreciate you showing up on this.
I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's really fun, Peter. You know, you and I have talked about John before, and I was giving this compliment to him before, which is, I think, I haven't got good enough that I can explain things simply. Always, that's a level of advanced thinking. Whereas next thing I know, you and I are talking about automations.
We'll get you there.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. And John, I think, has spent freaking 30 years being able to distill stuff to like, like what's my system for texting John at night when I'm in bed, having ideas. Peter did that the other week. I don't know if you knew that, John. Yeah, he was texting me a work thought the other day. But
John gets mad when I text him work stuff.
We're just talking about
you're the only guy that texts me about work stuff. I'm like, what year is this? What?
So wait, John, we were just talking about this. And Peter, I complimented you, but I'm going to retract.
Well, so you guys aren't in the same company, so you don't have that level of control. But when you're in a company, you can exert that control and say, don't do this. On the other hand, my kids were, as growing up in a different text generation than I was. And so they would text me and I would say, oh, great. They're at their phone. I'm going to call them.
A little different. What Peter does though, that's infuriating is he goes, oh, hey man, you going to Main Street Summit? Yeah. My daughter's a little sick. I'm good. By the way, should we raise a fund and buy companies? Oh, by the way, my daughter's good too. It's three personal.
Wait. Okay, John, now you're getting into, if somebody does emails or texts, there should be, one of the rules is only one topic per email. And the other thing that John does not ever do is put subject lines in them.
Yes, I'm very bad about that.
So the subject line should tell you what that is about. And
guilty as charged. The only time I put subject lines is if it's an automation from a voice note and it's written for me and it can dynamically populate the subject line. Other than that, I'm a bad subject. But Peter, the compliment I gave to you was you have in your company a communication document. I've seen it. Like this is what you text me for if we just got sued. And it's like you have a right. I mean, that's one of my favorite things you wrote. Oh yeah, there you go. Share your screen.
I can find it.
Yeah, I've seen it before. It's great. Yeah, you see, this is exactly what we're talking about, John.
Yeah.
That's so good. So you know how many business owners, if they just took an hour to create this bucket system, could save themselves so much chaos.
I wrote this about 7 years ago. It was a Word document originally.
And people follow it, right?
Yeah. And like we have to reinforce it sometimes and come back to it, but
You have to.
Yeah, I was thinking, I know, we're kind of near the end of our conversation, but I thought a fun topic for the three of us to talk about would be building a output and systems culture. Now, Peter has said, I'm no longer a systems maximalist. Him and I argue about that all the time. Whatever.
I don't even know what that means, but go ahead.
it just means that like when I think about emphasis on people versus emphasis on systems, I used to be hardcore, like 100% systems. The people are interchangeable cogs. And I've come off of that maximum. So maybe now I'm like 80% systems, 20% people or something like that.
So what you're describing is tacit knowledge, which is knowledge that you can't put into words, like how do you ride a bike? And you cannot replace that. And you don't want to replace that. John and I, you were talking about this earlier on about, somebody who says, I'm not a machine, you can't replace me. It's that tacit knowledge that you can't replace. What you can do with a system is organize things so that people with that tacit knowledge are using that most of the time and playing at the top of their game.
That's a really cool way to say it. Yeah.
So,
but what I was going to ask was, Peter, I have my methods. I'm sure John does. How have you built, in your experience, what are some of the lessons you have? So if somebody watches all three of these, they read John's book. John does a little bit of it, but I think you could write a whole book about it, which is how to bring this mindset. Maybe it's part 2, how to bring this mindset to your company, like how to wave this flag at the top. I'm an asshole. So my way that I did it was I wrote them all. And then I said, if you send me a message about something that's in Notion, I give you one warning and then I fire you. That was how I rolled out a culture of documentation in our company, which a little extreme. I was running a difficult company.
All right, Elon.
Yeah. I was like, one warning. And then, so everybody checked Notion and it's like, oh, we have a checklist for them. What are the kinder, gentler ways, John or Peter, that you guys have like built this muscle built a culture of output thinking, systemization, 7 buckets? Like,
I did it by moving 1,500 miles away and not knowing any of that stuff. And once I put it in the book, and my initial one was a Word document as well. And it was one long document and you could search for stuff. And
so good.
I mean, everything from what holidays we have off to how do you back up the computer?
It was like an ops manual.
Yeah, right? It was everything manual. And they would call and I'd say, well, let's look it up. And if I could find it, I would say, let's look on that page. But Peter, how'd you do it? Because
but John, that's what you would do, is they would call you and eventually they got sick of calling you because they learned that they should just go there first.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I'd make them go there. Peter, but you're in the weeds every day, or at least you're physically there. How do you do it?
Yeah, there was a few parts to it. I want to turn this up a little bit so I can hear myself better. I sound more important to myself when my voice is louder.
I just talk really loud. That's my trick.
All right, that's better. So the way we did it is there's like many steps, but the first step is finding a tool that your team actually likes to use and that you like to use. So I tried a bunch of different ones before I landed on Notion, because you're pushing a rock uphill if you're trying to get your team to use a tool that they don't like or that is difficult to use. Turns out Notion's great, so you should just shortcut that part and use Notion. Because
what were some of the ones? I tried Trainual.
I tried Trainual too.
tried
Yep.
Trainual, nobody used it. I tried maybe a shared drive and well-organized
Yep.
spreadsheet.
We had Dropbox, so that's kind of what we were coming from.
And then I knew Notion was the winner when I think I walked by somebody's desk and they had it up on their screen.
Yeah.
Yes, thank God. Right?
Yeah, I looked into another one. Had something to do with your brain. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, so that's the first thing. And then the cultural part of it is a lot of reminding people that it exists. I mean, that's a big part of any leadership, change management thing, is you're just constantly reinforcing it, right? Every meeting, every company meeting, reminders in Slack, emails going out, just sort of constantly coming back to it, just so people get the idea that this isn't something that is just going to blow over and go away. This isn't a little side project that the CEO is going to forget about. No, this is the main thing now, right? And then, kind of similar to what you guys were saying, once we got it set up, I did the initial legwork to get the framework set up, get it structured how I wanted it, and start loading information in there from old Word documents and Dropbox files and old email policy documents and stuff like that. Once we got a lot of that in there, then I introduced it to my team, and I added as a metric to each of my team members, each of my direct reports, every week you need to add or update one page in Notion and come ready to my one-on-one with you with a link to that page. And we'll look at it, and I'll kind of basically sign off on it and approve what you've written or updated. So they all got in the habit of adding a page a week, across multiple team members, across the whole company, starts to build it up pretty nicely, pretty quick. Well, eventually I had to stop that, because once most of it was in there, now they're just making stuff up and we're getting duplicate pages. And so I had to quickly put an end to that once we, got to a certain level. But I think one of the other things which you guys both touched on, which is if someone asks me a question, I immediately say, "Did you search Notion?" That's the first thing out of my mouth. I don't do as much of this anymore because people know, but for a while, this was my mantra.
Yeah.
And if they said no, I would say, "Well, go search Notion and let me know if you don't find it." And if they said yes, I couldn't find it, then I would say, "Great, pull up a chair. I want you to sit right here. We're going to create it." And I would create the page in Notion, and I would say, "What do you need to know? What about this? Go get him, bring him in here. We need to document this. Where's that file?" I would get a picture of it, like all this stuff. We'd get this really nice built out page. Then I would copy the link, drop it in their Slack, and say, "You have it waiting for you in the Slack inbox. Everything we just discussed is there, and now you never need to ask me again." And you just do that over and over, then eventually you're kind of done because everything's in there.
So
Very cool.
So good. I mean, it's just, it's really, really good. The one that I'll give you a little small thing that we've recently figured out, John, that you'd like, is we took our Notion, we put all the information into this proprietary AI tool. But one of the biggest things, it searches Notion basically better than Notion's native search. But one of the best parts about it, that's a sneaky benefit, is you can export a list of every question that anybody's asked and questions it didn't know the answer to. And so we use that list of questions that people didn't know the answer to. They went to Notion to figure out what's the Wi-Fi code at the office. And the AI tool said, "I don't know the Wi-Fi password." And we're like,
need to put that in there.
And it's a part of one of our cadences, which is every month we export the unanswered questions list. And we do basically what Peter.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool, sneaky benefit of these AI tools is you can export the lists. And
Notion just released their own AI answer thing. Do you see that?
I don't have access to it yet. Do you? I'm on the list.
I put a request. I got on the list. Yeah.
Peter and I are like, the people at the Star Wars premiere who play dress up to be first in line at the theater. Peter and I put the request in for the Notion AI, Well, John, I know we're kind of nearing the end of our time. We talked through the 7 buckets plus the 8th, which is my favorite, which is, what do you want out of your company? Which I think is a really, really cool question. I don't think Peter always knows the answer to that in his company. I certainly don't in mine, which is what do you want out of this thing? Any final thoughts? You should definitely plug the book. You should do that again. And then any final thoughts? So I'll give you the last word.
Yeah. So the book is called Output Thinking, and it explains how to look at the company as a collection of outputs, because the outputs are more permanent than people. And knowing that in detail will help you manage people better, help people get more engaged, help you be more profitable. The outputs are produced by systems, and we talked about how systems repeat and break into subsystems, and then those ultimately fill the buckets in your company. And outputthinking.com is where you can find the details of it, and a link to it's on Amazon. You can pre-order the Kindle version on Amazon before December 7th. On December 7th, you'll be able to write a review and buy the paperback version.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been fun. 3-part
Yeah.
series coming to an end.
Indeed.
You'll write a second book and we'll do it again. Thanks, Joe.
Take care, guys.